Team Canada is the favored side in the Four Nations face-off on FanDuel, but should they be? That is our big discussion here, Coco, as the projected rosters for the Four Nations face-off are out. Canada as the favorites. Did FanDuel get it right?
Well, we're going to find out if they got it right, but in my eyes, they're absolutely the favorite because anytime you can build a team that starts with three of the best players to play the game, McDavid, McKinnon, and Crosby, that's a team that should be the favorite regardless of how it's surrounded. Because those three guys, McDavid led the Oilers to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Crosby's had multiple Stanley Cups. McKinnon's had a Stanley Cup in his own. These guys have won MVPs as well, too. That, to me, is the core that you build around for a successful team. And now everyone's going to point at the goaltending for Canada. And yes, rightfully so, because it is the weakest of the four teams. But you look at the goaltenders that Canada has available for them. Two of them have won Stanley Cups, including Jordan Binnington with the St. Louis Blues and Adin Hill for the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Now, Samuel Montembeault, a couple years ago, helped Canada win a world championship, so that sits really nicely on his profile. But when you're talking about a short tournament and you need your goalies to be your best, those guys have clearly shown that in big games, they can rise to the occasion and they can be at their best. And that's what Canada's hoping for in this playoffs. And then you talk about the way the rest of the roster has been rounded out for Canada. Ideally, in years past, Canada would choose bringing just the best talent available and having talent adapt. Well, I think in a short tournament like this, your focus is a little bit different. You want guys that you can bring in that have identifiable roles that can complete the rest of your rosters with a checking line, maybe with a fourth line, maybe with a shutdown line. So you have so many different options. But with Canada, what they've also chosen is to bring in guys that have championship caliber. 14 Stanley Cup on this roster. And in a short tournament like this, when you're competing for one trophy, those are guys that are going to help me push Canada towards the top.
So, Carlo, I do disagree. I think the United States is the best team, and I think the United States should be favored. And I would never dispute Canada's talent up front. Their high-end skill is better than anybody else on the planet. And I think on the back end, they're just as good, if not better, than anybody else. But I don't think we can simply overlook the discrepancy in goal for Canada against the States, Canada against Sweden, Canada against Finland. It's a massive drop-off, and I get it. Binnington won a cup 5 years ago, Adin Hill a couple of years ago. But this year, they have save percentages below 900. Meanwhile, Connor Hellebuck, a stone-cold stud. Philip Gustafson has been a monster for Minnesota, and UC Saros has been great for Nashville. There's a steep drop-off in goal for Canada. And sure, you can get lucky, you can get hot, but I'm not in the business of getting lucky or hot. I'm in the business of picking the best teams. And for me, it's the United States, simply because their goaltending is the best, and I think their forward groups and defense group is just as good of that as Canada.
Well, AK, there's no denying of what you said because they're all valid points. But in a short tournament like this, you can't play all three goaltenders in the same game. So for the U.S., you got to pick one guy. And I look at that roster. Of those one guys, which guy has won a big game and has played in those big moments? None of them. You look at the Finland and the Swedish roster. All great goaltenders, but none of them have won the big game when it counts the most. And I think that is extremely vital in a tournament like this when you're talking about the pressure that is going to be presented for those type of players. So that's why, the way we look at goaltending nowadays too, and the recent teams that have won the Stanley Cups, we don't have your elite goaltenders that are winning them. Yes, Bobrovsky did win it last year, but Florida was a pretty stacked team in front of him. But when you look at goaltending in a tournament like this, all you would need a guy to do is to be above average and make the big save when it's counted on. And I believe Canada trusts those guys in net to do it, which to me makes them the favorite in this tournament.
Carlo, you have not quite sold me yet on Canada being the favorite. And apparently, a trio of Edmonton Oilers did not sell themselves to the Canadian brass to make the Four Nations face-off team. We know Zach Hyman's out. We know Evan Bouchard is out. And Stuart Skinner is out as well. Do those guys surprise you in that they were virtual locks to make the team as recently as a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, they definitely do surprise me because I participated in this activity for over a year now, and every list that I put together prior to this final one had those three guys locked in on it. And it's understandable why they're not. Zach Hyman has had a very slow start to his season. He's only got 3 goals on the year. Evan Bouchard, to me, is a one-dimensional type of player. Yeah, everyone wants to say the Bouch bomb and he can help, run a power play, but Canada has guys that can run power play. Makar can be out there for the full 2 minutes. Shea Theodore, Alex Pietrangelo, Josh Morrissey, all these guys run power plays for their respective teams. So do you really want to bring a guy who's one-dimensional, who at a lot of times this season has exposed himself to the defensive game? And Stuart Skinner, he's a guy that I had a virtual lock to because of the weakness we just talked about in net. But taking Edmonton to the Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals hasn't really found that same level of game, and that's opened up the door for a guy like Adem Hill and his resume of winning a Stanley Cup, and Montembeault and his resume of winning a big game at the World Championships to leapfrog him in those positions. And when it comes to Hyman, his position was always going to be attached to Connor McDavid because he plays so well beside him. And it's still a surprise to me that he's not on it. But when you see the guys that they have projected to have replaced him with, you're talking about Sam Reinhart, Sam Bennett, Mark Stone, Brandon Hagel, Travis Konechny. They all play the same type of game that are having way better starts to their season, and those guys have earned the right for over Hyman right now.
Well, we've been debating this for months. We'll continue to debate it for a few more as the four nations face off only a couple months away.